Hello, everyone. This is Washington in Action. As you know, we have several people who are speaking, but the first is definitely an important advocate for the 28th Amendment, not the ERA, the 28th Amendment. And it's particularly a pleasure because I just found out that someone I taught legislative procedure to is now the chief counsel for Senator Cardin when I was visiting at the University of Maryland. So I want to introduce you an extraordinary advocate for the 28th Amendment and equal rights, an extraordinary leader in the fight for human rights around the globe, and a great senator for the great state of Maryland, Ben Cardin.
Professor Nurse, don't leave us so quickly. Where are you? I want to thank you. All right, going this way. I want to thank you. You did a great job on Bill Van Horn. He's a really good chief counsel. So thank you for imparting into him what is necessary. And we have a lot of procedural problems in the United States Senate. I don't think you've noticed that or not, but we thank you very much. And Helen Rogers from my staff is also here. The staff do incredible work for us, and I just always want to acknowledge them. Thank you for being here. Thank you for what you do. I want to thank the sponsors, and I want to thank you for putting this on. I know my colleagues from the House of Representatives will be here a little later on. They have some voting that they're doing at this particular moment. It is a challenge because of the leadership in the House of Representatives for them to get anything done. So hopefully they'll be able to move some legislation. I just really want to just start by saying 100 years is too long to wait on this thing. We've got to get the acknowledgement of the amendment as being part of the Constitution. I mean, that's the bottom line. I strongly support the efforts that Senator Gillibrand and Representative Bush are doing in regards to ERA now, an acknowledgement. My legislature, the Maryland legislature, has passed a resolution to acknowledge the Equal Rights Amendment as part of our Constitution. We need the states to act. We need the White House to be a little bit more friendly towards the view. There is nothing in the Constitution of the United States, Article 5, that talks about a time limit. There is no time limit on equality. As we know, the amendment before the Equal Rights Amendment was ratified was the one dealing with congressional pay, and that took about 200 and some years for that to become ratified. So there is no time limit on the constitutional process. The 38th state ratified in 2000 with Virginia. That was what is required in the Constitution. So the ERA should be acknowledged as part of the Constitution of the United States, and we're going to continue to work for that. But in the meantime, we have other strategies that we are working with. The American people are on our side. You know that. Every poll shows that the overwhelming majority of Americans believe it's part of the Constitution of the United States and support it as being part of the Constitution of the United States. So we have the American people on our side. It's urgent that we get this done. As I said, it's been over 100 years we've been, not me personally, but we've been fighting to get this as part of the Constitution with the ratification of the women's rights to vote 104 years ago. We've been working on this issue ever since, and we've got to complete the job. But it's urgent today. Why is it urgent today? Because we have runaway courts. We have runaway courts that are coming up with absurd interpretations of our Constitution. We need a stricter interpretation as it relates to the rights, the Equal Rights Amendment. And that's what it will give us. Yes, the Dobbs decision puts a big spotlight on this, but we're seeing other decisions that are eroding the rights. I never thought I would see this. You know, the Dobbs decision erased rights that were embedded for 48 years, giving women the right to control their own destiny, their own healthcare decisions. but we have equal concern about what these rights will be for pregnant women, what the rights are going to be for violence against women, what the rights are going to be in regards to workplace and workplace safety issues. The list goes on and on and on, that we need to have the protection of the strict interpretations as is provided by the Equal Rights Amendment being part of our Constitution. So we really need to have that extra protection in the Constitution. So where are we? The legislation I introduced over a decade ago to remove the time limit, which has been done in the past. So this is not something that hasn't been done before. Congress put a time limit on it. There's no requirement for a time limit. There's a certain argument that we feel very passionately about, that does not deny the ratification, even if that time limit still remains in law. But we want to take that time limit out of law to make it clear as possible and to move this issue along. And we have seen that legislation pass the House of Representatives in previous Congresses. We want to get it passed again in the House of Representatives, and there is a discharge petition in order to make that a reality. In the United States Senate, we have 53 co-sponsors of that legislation. Now, the last time I checked, the majority of the Senate is 51. So we have a majority of the Senate. We have every single Democrat, every single independent. We have Senator Murkowski and Senator Collins. It's bipartisan. So we have that support. We want to get that passed. I want to thank Senator Durbin. Senator Durbin held the first hearing on the Equal Rights Amendment last year, and it gave us the opportunity to establish the record, the clear record, about why the bill resolution that I've introduced should be passed. We then had a vote. Thank you, Senator Schumer, for scheduling a vote on the floor of the United States Senate. The majority of the senators voted in favor of moving forward to pass that legislation. Senator Schumer took steps so we can reconsider that at any time. So we can reconsider that. We can have more votes this year on this issue. But because of the arcane use of the filibuster in the Senate, and I know there are some areas that you might think it's important to slow down legislation. I do. But for 100 years, this has gone well too long. And there's fundamental legislation that the Senate rules should allow us to vote on. And that's been denied in regards to the legislation to clarify the enactment of the Equal Rights Amendment. So we think that is an exception, should be made an exception, and we should be able to get it passed in the Senate. But we got to get passed in the House and the Senate and signed by the president. So we are determined to continue this effort. We want to get it done this year, and we know we need help. And that's why I was so pleased that this forum is taking place. And I want you to know we are open. We're a part of this team. You have incredible leaders on the ERA that are in this room who've been working on this issue. We applaud their efforts. They're keeping public attention on this. That's important. Let me tell you how democracies work. They work on election day to who you elect to office. This needs to be resolved, I hope, before Election Day, but if it's not, then we should make sure that this becomes an issue in the voters understand who's on their side and who's not on their side, and that this becomes an important issue to make sure that we have the right lineup come the next year, if we don't get it done this year, to make sure that we have this acknowledged as part of the Constitution of the United States. Thank you all. I understand we're going to have some friendly questions. I always like friendly questions.
Thank you. I have the privilege of moderating this Q&A. So everyone queue up your questions for Senator Cardin. I'll start things off. My name is Ting Ting Cheng. I'm the director of the Equal Rights Amendment Project at Columbia Law School Center for Gender and Sexuality Law. Thank you for being here. Oh, thank you. Okay. So as you see, we are joined by incredible advocates, youth leaders, elected officials, scholars, people in the private sector, essentially representing everybody in society. What is your advice for people as a group of very different people with different viewpoints to keep the momentum up?
Thank you. That's a very important question, and that's why we have the ERA Coalition and leadership. We try to focus our strategies together. We have at this stage several strategies that we're using that to get the legal acknowledgement that the ERA is part of the Constitution. That's being waged on two fronts. One, to get a friendlier reaction from the administration on legal interpretations, and secondly, to bring this issue up in a judicial way where we think we can be successful in getting it acknowledged. So that's strategy one, and we want us to be all focused on those strategies. Strategy two is to get the legislation, the resolution that I sponsored along with 52 of my colleagues, enacted into law that would remove any doubt about the time limit that Congress placed on the enacting legislation that allowed the states to vote on the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. So that is our second avenue of efforts. In regards to the first, we do have legislation in that would acknowledge that the ERA is part of the Constitution, that we should be supportive as well. So to put attention on that. And then lastly, it's the rules of how we operate in the House and Senate, to put a focus on the fact that both bodies should be voting by majority vote on the Equal Rights Amendment. And if we do that, we think we can win the Equal Rights Amendment on the floor of the House and the floor of the Senate. So it's those strategies that we're trying to get everyone to be focused on, to get things done in this Congress. And then lastly, let me put the need for education. Education in two fronts. One, I'm happy everybody thinks the ERA is part of the Constitution, but we need the public to understand that we need to still take steps to make sure it is acknowledged as part of the Constitution and becomes part of our Constitution. So there's an educational process here. And why is that important? Because we want to make sure that we have our constituencies asking the right questions of our candidates so they'll vote the right way so we can complete the job on the Equal Rights Amendment. And then secondly, the importance of the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment, because many Americans say, why, it's 2024. Do we really need an Equal Rights Amendment in the Constitution? The answer is clearly yes. And we need to educate the public as to what's happening in our courts and the needs and the different scrutinies that are available if the Equal Rights Amendment becomes part of our Constitution.
Hi, Senator Cardin. My name's Katie Hornung, and I led the advocacy groups, the Coalition of Advocates in Virginia for the Virginia ratification.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Well done.
Thank you. Many of us would love to see this important human rights conversation held in the larger context of our international standing and our failure to uphold international treaties by not publishing our 28th Amendment. In your final months as senator and as the chair of the Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs, will you schedule a hearing about the ERA?
That's an interesting point. I serve as the Senate chair of the Helsinki Commission, which is an international group for Europe and Central Asia and North America. And we have used that forum to point out that the United States is violating international standards by denying the citizens of the District of Columbia full voting protections and representation in the United States Congress and Senate. And I've actually sponsored resolutions, and those resolutions actually have passed to hold the United States out of step with the international community. I want to go over this with the ERA coalition as to where we think the focus needs to be in regards to the United States Senate before we use any of our Senate mechanisms to put a spotlight on one strategy versus another. I also recognize that this is a little sensitive because it's Democrat on Democrat when we talk about what the White House is doing. So I need, and this is an election year in case you haven't noticed. So it's a strategy decision that I want to make along with the coalition.
Hi, Senator. My name is Claudia Nachega. I'm the Deputy Executive Director at the Young Feminist Party, which is a 14,000 strong youth-led movement to finalize the Equal Rights Amendment. I'm also a proud Marylander, and I want to say young Marylanders are so proud of you and your astounding leadership in the Senate, just pioneering the ERA.
I'm glad I recognized you for a question.
I wanted to ask, so given your experience and expertise in the Senate, what is your outlook regarding whether or not the ERA will be passed in the Senate, given the fact that the ERA is not regular legislation, it's legislation relating to Article 5 matters and shouldn't be subject to the Senate filibuster?
It's an excellent question. We have not been able, we need 50 senators. We don't need 51. We need 50 senators that are willing to allow Senator Schumer to make that interpretation and will support that interpretation. As of last count, we had a maximum, it wasn't 100% sure we had that number, but a maximum of 49. We did not have 50. And I say a maximum. I'm going to tell you, I don't think we have 49. I think we're probably lower. If we get it to a vote, we can lobby, and I think we can get it up. But it's right now probably the mid 40s that where we are on that type of an interpretation of our rules. So that's the pragmatic challenges we have. We need to be able to support Senator Schumer's actions on that. Senator Schumer is prepared to move forward if he can get the 50 votes, and then of course the vice president would be the 51st vote. Whenever Kamala Harris votes in the United States Senate, we always win. So we like that, always like having her there. So it's a strategy that I don't think we should give up on. I think we should work to try to see if it's can't reach the finish lines in this Congress. And as you get closer and closer to the end of the session of the Congress, when several of these senators will not be returning to the Senate, it'd be helpful if we could get this done this year.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senator. My name is Jake Irving, and I'm a student here at Georgetown. I had a quick question looking forward. What are some prospective pieces of legislation that aren't feasible under the current constitutional framework that maybe would be possible after the 28th Amendment is widely recognized?
It's a good question. I think it's more to protect than it is in affirmative passing, but it's an excellent question. I have to give it a little bit more thought. We are right now struggling in regards to some court interpretations that are affecting affirmative action, affecting the use of demographic data, et cetera, that is really causing tremendous challenge on dealing with underrepresented communities, underserved communities. So I would have to give that some thought as to whether we want to adopt any additional affirmative protections in regards to the Equal Rights Amendments. My guess is that there would be an evaluation made, and there would probably be an effort for legislation because we can go further than we've gone in the past. It's not a protected class under the Constitution, so therefore we do not have the same rights that we had on race. So it is an issue that I think we would have to evaluate. But it's a good question.
So I think we're nearly at time, and I guess I'll close by asking you what your plans are for post-Senate, and what are your plans to advocate for the ERA or gender justice as a civilian?
Okay, thank you for that. I can assure you that as I tell people who think that I might be retiring, I'm not retiring. I'm just not running for re-election. I've been extremely fortunate. I've had a chance to serve in the Maryland General Assembly and as Speaker of the Maryland House. I've served in the House of Representatives and now in the United States Senate. It's been an incredible journey, and I thank the people of Maryland for allowing me to do this. I started as a law student, and I don't necessarily recommend that to the law students that are here. But I did start, well, of course, Columbia is in the city, so you're close to, well, you're a little far away from Albany, so that'd be a heavy commute. But I was a Maryland law student when I ran for the Maryland legislature, was elected and served in the Maryland legislature during my third year in law school. So it's been a long run, and I really appreciate the support I've received from the people of Maryland. So I do intend to stay active. I will follow the priorities that I have. One of those is the Equal Rights Amendment. So I intend to be actively engaged to see it completed. I hope it's completed during my term as a senator, but if it's not, I will continue to work in that effort. I'm going to work on environment. I'm going to work on human rights issues. I'm going to work on those issues that I think are the ones that I can give some value to the policy development of our nation. So I've been heavily engaged in human rights issues and heavily engaged in the environment. And I love Baltimore. I'll try to do things to help my beloved city. Thank you all very much.